I mean, I'm young, I'm 43. If I were diagnosed today, I would probably start Levodopa today. Not huge doses, not anything that caused side effects, but I would start with very small doses and try to slowly inch up to the point where I give my body enough dopamine to feel like my old self again. You will notice very quickly that your muscles aren't as tight and sore. It is just easier to walk when you have the idea that you want to reach for something or take a step. That starts to happen with much more fluidity. I think one of the things that people don't realize is this is kind of in the under the spectrum of quality of life. For those people who are unmedicated, there's this thing that I've noticed just from the psychological benefits. Without medications on board, every second of your waking day, you have a reminder of this disease. You have this tremor, you have this stiffness. And there's something that I can't quantify, I don't even know that I have the words for, about how nice it is for psychologically to be able to take a medicine that makes you forget about this disease for a few hours at a time, and you can just get on with your life. I think when people remain unmedicated, what tends to happen is hour after hour after hour you are thinking about this disease, and even though you may be conversing with friends at your work, doing what you do, in the back of your mind you are hiding and coping with the symptoms of this disease. When you get adequately medicated, most people will say, I feel like my old self again. Meds do not treat everything. They absolutely don't, especially the non-motor symptoms. But as far as the motor symptoms, the tremor, the stiffness, the rigidity, meds make all the difference in the world, the dopaminergic meds. And so I think that from a mental health perspective, it is invaluable to not make Parkinson's your identity, to not have every second of the day have this reminder that you are dealing with Parkinson's. I mean, so I think that's a really important part. I think that once you are adequately medicated, what most people realize, especially if they've had Parkinson's motor symptoms for a couple years and gone without medications, what they'll find is they've been exercising all along, but not only are they a little more motivated, I think some of the apathy comes from low dopamine levels when you replace dopamine, which is really pleasure pathway. It's a little easier to initiate the trip to the gym, the motivation to call somebody and say, hey, you want to play a game of racquetball? Yeah, I'll go to Rocksteady Boxing. And so I think when somebody starts to get dopamine on board, what they realize is not only are they often a little bit more optimistic and motivated about working out, they are able to work out so much harder. They can get more done when they're hour at the gym or in their class. And so because they're moving easier, they can get a better workout. Same thing with things like food. It is really hard for somebody who is stiff and slow and rigid to stand there at a cutting board chopping vegetables, chopping carrots. When you're adequately medicated, it's like your old self again. It's easier to chop veggies and make yourself a salad and take better care of yourself, eat healthy, cook, instead of fast food or things that might be pre-prepared. So we'll talk about food in another video, but I do think that people have told me that once medicated, they find it a lot easier to take care of themselves. In terms of progression, I think that again, I said we'll talk about the rate of progression differently, but the way I like to think about complementary and alternative medicine and what I'm doing here and the conventional drugs is I imagine Parkinson's disease a little bit like a boat with a whole bunch of little holes in the bottom of the boat, and the boat is slowly sinking, slowly. And so, you've got a little leak where I think there's a glutathione deficiency, and you have a big hole where dopamine deficiency is, and there's probably a little CoQ10 deficiency and lithium deficiency. And my job is really to figure out how to plug the holes in the bottom of the boat to stop it from sinking. I'm playing offense. I want to get to the bottom of what is causing the problem and can we stop it. I like to think of the dopaminergic medications as the bucket that we are going to use to take out the water from the boat and start to lighten our load. That is going to make it so much easier to get to work doing what we want to do. The other example that I give people in the clinic is people come in all the time and they say, hey, I don't want to take medications, but I want to reverse this disease. And while this is really an oversimplification, what I tell them is your brain only has so many resources, right? And right now it is freaking out that it doesn't have enough dopamine to get its job done, right? And so it's like you coming to me saying, hey, I had a house fire and I'd like to rebuild the house. And I say, great, I would love to help you rebuild the house. You're still on fire. So what I want you to do is think about dopamine as putting out the fire. Just give your brain what it wants. The loss of dopamine is not the cause of this disease. It is a consequence to the disease. Parkinson's started years before, probably in the intestinal tract, and it moved up through probably your vagus nerve into your brain. And only when 50% or more of that substantia nigra was degenerated did you even know that there was a problem. But the whole body has Parkinson's disease. It's just a substantial loss of dopaminergic neurons in the substantia nigra that lets you know that there's a problem. The problem is way different than that. This is a downstream consequence. So there is very, very, very little value to thinking that somehow continuing to deprive your brain of dopamine is helping you in any way. We just need to give the brain what it wants so it can get on with its life, so we can get to work rebuilding and focus all of your resources on the remodel. So those are kind of the ways I like to think about dopamine.